Hello, my name is Kendall Weaver. I am a senior music education major here at the Butler School of Music. I'm a violist, and I am here today on the Butler podcast.
Well, welcome. It's so great to have you.
The pleasure's all mine. Thank you. Thank you.
You're the first undergraduate we've ever had on the podcast, and I can't think of anybody more fitting because whenever you're in the building, Kendall is in the building. And sometimes it'll be like you'll go to an orchestra concert on a Friday, opera the next night, and then the next morning string project at 8 a.m. and you're there for all of it. So it's just I can't think of anybody to talk more about the undergraduate experience than you. So let's start. How did you decide to come to Butler?
Well, so let's flash back a little bit to my high school experience. I was born and raised here in Austin, and when I was a sophomore in high school, Dr. Lori Scott came to visit our program, and it was like a guest clinician type thing, and I started talking with her and I realized, hey, I really want to teach music. And so I worked with my high school director and my private teacher at the time. And we kind of came up with a list of different colleges that I wanted to apply to. And UT was kind of the dream. We said that it was going to be a long shot to get in, but if I got in, that's where I was going to go. And UT was the last acceptance letter that I received. And I was on the phone with my mom, and my mom said to me, she said, well, you can't turn down an offer from UT. You can't. And she said, whatever we have to do to get you to go there, we will.
Wow.
And so in that moment, I was like, okay, I'm going to be a Longhorn. And, growing up in Austin, I've always been a Longhorn. My dad was a huge football fan. My mom does a lot of the merchandise for UT and the College of Fine Arts. And I was just so ecstatic to know that I was going to be a Longhorn. And I just had to come here.
Wow. Wait, does your mom work here?
So my mom works for an advertising agency. They are Greek licensed to do all the printing for UT. So they do the College of Fine Arts shirts. They've done stuff for the football team. They've done other deliveries to other campus organizations. But yeah, she does a lot of work for UT.
Great. And when did you start playing music?
I started in sixth grade, like a lot of my friends and colleagues around me. I picked up viola. My mom told me, she said, I don't want you playing a woodwind or brass instrument because your mouthpieces and all of that can get a little gross sometimes. And then she said, I also don't want to lug around a big cello or big double bass. And so I was kind of pointed in the direction of violin and viola. And I preferred viola because it was more unique and it was a little bit different.
And you started on viola.
Yes, I did.
Okay, but you teach also violin now.
Mm-hmm.
So did you pick that up along the way in music education classes?
Yeah, I picked that up freshman year, a little bit towards the summer of after when I was graduating high school into freshman year of college is when I started playing violin a lot. I took Suzuki classes to become Suzuki trained for Book 1 and Every Child Can. And from there, violin has just become part of what I do. I carry around both of them sometimes. You probably see me carrying around lots of cases and always got different instruments on me. But yeah.
Yeah. So let's talk about you. So you get to you get accepted. Do you remember where you were when you got accepted?
I was actually in the car. I was with my dad. And we were driving around. I forget what we were doing. I think we were going to HEB or something. But I got the email on my phone and I called and I was like, oh my gosh, I got into UT. And I called my mom, and me and my dad we were freaking out. We were so excited. And
in the HEB parking lot.
And so my mom we were just so ecstatic that this opportunity was going to be opened up for me. And I mean, obviously it's turned into something amazing, really.
Yeah, and then so then you get here, and what was it like first coming here to UT?
First coming here, I was a little bit nervous. I can't lie when I say that. This school has always been the top of the top for public universities in the state, and I knew that there were some big shoes to fill, we'll say. And coming here, I was really nervous. I had never lived away from home, and I was living in the dorms at the time. I was throwing myself straight into string project, and I had 8 private students as a freshman, which is a lot. I was teaching group classes by myself. I was doing all sorts of classes. I was trying to figure out what the future looked like. So I think a good way to describe it was a little overwhelmed. But ultimately, I kind of found my groove and really settled in. And now I love this building, and I love all the people in here.
Yeah. So let's talk about how that must have been intimidating starting a string project, because that's an intimidating program. So what
Oh,
was that like starting out as a teacher for a string project?
well, I talked to Dr. Scott over the summer before I came here as a freshman, and she encouraged me to get Suzuki training done. And so I signed up for 2 classes, the Every Child Can class, which is kind of the introduction to the Suzuki method, and then book 1 for violin. So after those 2 trainings, I got to actually skip my intern phase, and I got to go straight to being a teacher. So that's why they gave me, 8 private students, and I was leading group classes, and I was doing all sorts of stuff like lesson planning, organizing events, all of that stuff. And so I would say for the first few weeks, it was really overwhelming. Um, there's just so many things happening in string projects, and there's so many moving parts that it's something that you kind of have to experience a few times before you really start to get the hang of things, as I'm sure you're aware of that.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's really impressive because, like, like you'll have a student who maybe has never taught someone like you, and it'll be like the first hour you'll be with like 3-year-olds, and the next hour you'll be with high school students, and then elementary is the third. It's just crazy.
Mm-hmm. It's especially because you have to change your mindset for teaching for each individual age group. I have, for example, this semester I'm teaching a viola technique class for some more beginner level students, but some advanced students. And then immediately I go straight into conducting the top orchestra. And then
Wow.
from there, we go immediately back to beginner instruments on secondary instruments, where we have the kids swap instruments for the class and they learn different things. So really, I think my experience has just been you have to adapt and you have to be ready for anything. And the biggest piece of advice that was given to me by one of the seniors, I forgot who it was, but it was Kevin Huipas. I love Mr. Kevin.
Yeah,
He told
yeah.
me, he said, throw yourself in there and just go for it and see what happens. And so that's what I did.
Great. Is you? I'm sure you'd share that advice, but is there any advice you would have to freshmen coming in?
If you're a string player, I would very highly recommend String Project. It has taught me so much, not just about how to teach, but about my own playing, about my own approach to practice, and about how I hold myself in front of people that look up to me. It really was all about maturing and learning and growing. And it's something that you can't get anywhere else.
Yes. So it's like, how has it changed your practice? You said practice, right? Mm-hmm. How has it changed your practice?
Well, one of the things that we do in String Project is we have our weekly meetings on Wednesdays. And during that time, we talk about a variety of topics. We talk about topics from how to lesson plan to how to approach masterclass style work to practice tips and how you get your students to practice better. And kind of through osmosis, I myself have picked up little tips and techniques for practicing. Like, for example, one of the things that we talk about is that after a certain time playing, a certain length of time that you've been practicing, your brain stops being able to absorb new information. And so for me, I've determined that range is about 1 to 2 hours at a time, and then I need to take a little break. And so that has made my practicing so much more efficient, because before I used to practice for 3 or 4 hours on end, and my brain would get so exhausted by the end of it. But now I know to break up my practicing, and my practicing has gotten much more effective. I have new techniques for rehearsing for practicing intonation, for practicing tempo, for practicing musicality. All of these different techniques that were told to me in the idea that I would teach them someday also taught me how I can better improve as a player.
Wow, that's so interesting. So let's move on to some of the other stuff you've done here at Butler. Besides, I know String Project is huge. That's how we first met. Mm-hmm. You've taught my daughter. I think, did you teach both of them, or was it just Emma?
I think it was just Emma.
Okay, yeah. So maybe Anastasia wasn't quite. Yeah, I don't think she just didn't. The stars didn't align for you to teach her. But what about some of the other ensembles you've been in? So you've been in I know you've been in the orchestra, mm-hmm. right? We've seen you in the orchestra. You've been in the opera mm-hmm. orchestra.
Yep.
So talk about some of these experiences.
Yeah. Coming here to UT, this was easily the best ensemble that I've ever gotten a chance to play with. I played in, all region, stuff like that, and Austin Youth Orchestra, but coming here, it was a completely different experience. I mean, usually during my high school experiences, it would be the first few rehearsals are, okay, we're learning our notes, we're figuring out how the music goes. This time, they threw us in like that, and the maestro Hudiev was like, all right, let's go from the top. And we just went for it. And I was totally unprepared.
What was this? Was this with orchestra?
This was with orchestra,
Okay.
yeah. This is my first time being with the UT Symphony Orchestra. We were doing, I believe, Tchaikovsky Romeo and Juliet Overture, which is a terribly tricky piece to put together. But it was so intense, and the level of playing and the musicality and the expression, everything was just kicked up to 11. And to me, that was something that was so eye-opening, was the fact that, I had gone from feeling like I was pretty good at my instrument, that I was doing very well, to suddenly all these people around me are incredible musicians and incredible players. And I was like, okay, I really need to step my game up. And so I practiced and I put my nose to the grindstone. And now the symphony rehearsals and ensemble rotations are a little bit less intimidating and they're more fun.
Yeah. Yeah, you've gotten used to the pace.
Mm-hmm.
Was it hard to get in? Like, what year did you get into the symphony?
I got in freshman year. So I was a freshman viola player with the symphony ensemble. That would have been the fall of 2021, I believe.
Okay.
And so we were just coming out of the pandemic. I had been doing virtual rehearsal for almost a full year at that point. I know that was my reaction. But really coming back to a live rehearsal space and getting to sit down with such a talented director and talented orchestra was so eye-opening and so incredible. And I'm really grateful that I got that chance.
Was it hard being in there because there's a lot of master students and DMA students, and was it hard being in that group as a freshman?
I definitely felt a little bit of imposter syndrome. I felt like I didn't really belong. I felt like I was kind of not really in the right spot, but I soon found my groove thanks to the studio and, the violists around me all being so encouraging and so kind. And eventually I really felt like I had found my home.
Okay. Is it rare to get accepted as a freshman?
I think it depends a lot on the instrument that you play and what studio you're in, what section you're in, all of that stuff. For example, when Professor Myers was teaching here, he would only ever accept the number of viola players that would fill out a symphony section. Okay. So we were almost guaranteed to get a spot as violists because there was only 12 of us. And that's usually the number that goes into a symphony. But something like the violin studio might have a lot more competition because there's so many more violin players.
Okay.
And for woodwinds and brass, it's a little different because they have wind symphony, wind ensemble, symphony band, all of those things that are rotating ensembles. So honestly, I'm not super experienced on how that works.
Yeah. So what's been your favorite experience so far with the orchestra here?
I think my favorite experience was that I have two of them. My favorite was one of them was playing Beethoven Symphony No. 9 in my freshman year because that was such a cool experience. It was my first ever full symphony, and it was my first time really ever playing a serious work with choir and soloists and all of this stuff. And the rehearsals were grueling, but it came out just sounding so incredible, and I was so ecstatic with how we played. And then the other experience was playing Mahler Fifth Symphony because that's my favorite symphony, one of my favorite symphonies at least.
Oh wow! How long had it been your favorite symphony?
I've been listening to Mahler since I was junior in high school, and I love Mahler. Mahler and Tchaikovsky are two of my favorites.
Okay. Yeah, and so now let's move. So you've also done stuff with opera.
Mm-hmm.
I'm assuming you didn't have a lot of experience with opera.
Nope.
Prior to Butler.
Yeah,
right?
I came in here as a freshman, and my first opera that I ever played was with the Butler Opera Center, and we did Bizet's Carmen, which is a long and very tricky opera to put together. But I was really grateful for the director, Maestro Frost, who was super supportive and really pushed me to own my part, as he says. Know every single note that's in that book. And really that was what led me down the path of improving as a player, is the fact that I really sat down and figured out what I needed to do to make this opera sound amazing. And it was kind of that freshman year experience of the first symphony, the second symphony ensemble, the third rotation, all of that stuff. As each rotation happened, I felt myself getting more serious about how I approached playing and how I approached ensemble rehearsals. And when opera came around, because opera would have been the last rotation, it would have been in May of, April, I'm sorry. It would have been April of 2022. That was the moment where I realized that Oh my gosh, opera is so crazy. It's just so long, and there's so many notes, and I realized that I had to put so much more effort into opera than I had anything before, even playing in symphony rehearsals.
Yeah, how does it differ, opera than symphony?
Well, symphony is really fun in the aspect of the center of attention is on the orchestra. And it's all about what the orchestra does, how the orchestra plays, and how the director, works with the orchestra. With opera, there's a lot more moving parts. There's stage management, there's lighting, there's singing, there's choreography, there's, how as a director do you communicate with what's on stage and what's in the pit. And so all of those challenges meant putting together the opera was really hard to do.
Yeah. How many violists are in like a opera orchestra?
For opera, we have reduced sections. I think usually it's about 4. There's usually, I believe, 6 violins for first and second, so 12 total. There's usually 6 cellists and 4 viola players, and then 2 double bass. And then rest is wind and brass as needed for whatever instrumentation they have.
Okay. Did you like playing the 4? Like you played 4 times? Right, because there's 4.
Yeah.
Did you like that, or did you like the symphony where you kind of work on that one performance?
I really, honestly, I think both of them have their pros and cons. Definitely by the last of the opera shows, I was a little bit tired. not just
well, you're on
physically.
12 hours of performing it at that point. So.
Yeah, not just tired of playing either. Sometimes the music feels it can get a little old. But I think for symphony, I really loved, and this is another reason that I loved the Beethoven concert so much, is because we played the Beethoven Symphony 9 twice. We did 2 concerts for it. Oh, and I really enjoyed that because it allowed my family and my family friends to see 2 different shows. So I had family friends that couldn't come to Friday, they could come to Saturday. And the same thing with opera. I had friends that couldn't make it to the first week of opera, so they came to the second week of opera. But it's definitely a lot more intense to do opera. And especially because of, they have late night rehearsals that go from like 7 o'clock in the evening until 10, 11 sometimes, which those are, that's when.
Especially when you had an 8 a.m. class to start out the day, right?
Oh man, don't even get me started. That happened last spring. I had 8 a.m. Brass tech, and then I had a full day up until 11 o'clock at night playing an opera. And by the time I got out, I was like, I don't want to go to class the next day.
Well, that's amazing. So let's talk about talk kind of about the major ensembles. What are some other kind of highlights of your experience here at Butler that weren't with major ensembles or string project?
I think one of the major things that I really enjoyed is chamber music. I'm an avid chamber musician. I think chamber music is one of the most important things that young musicians can play, and I encourage all of my students to participate in string quartets or string trios or anything like that. And when I came in freshman year, usually they don't allow freshmen to play chamber music, but they needed a viola player to fill out an ensemble, and I volunteered. And I had an absolute blast playing some Schubert, and it was so, so awesome because I got to learn and experience from some of the best players in this school, really, how chamber music works. Because I had played, I think, 2 string quartets before coming here. But when I came here, the rehearsal and everything, the way we approached chamber music was so vastly different than being in a high school chamber ensemble that it really, I talk a lot about it forcing me to grow and really improve my playing. Chamber music really forced me to think about communication and how I communicate with other members of the ensemble. And so coming out of that freshman semester, the fall, I volunteered again to do chamber music, and we put together a Shostakovich quartet. And, all of these experiences really taught me how to communicate better as a player when there isn't somebody on the podium in front of you. And so that skill is really helpful now that I'm leading an orchestra and I'm leading kind of these classes and these ensembles to where it allows me to communicate better non-verbally.
Did you love chamber music coming into Butler?
I absolutely did.
Okay. Okay. And how does it differ from high school to here with chamber music?
Well, when I was at high school, every rehearsal session had a coach with them. When I came here, we only got coachings once a week, and we had to rehearse ourselves, which was a very different experience because one, I didn't have anybody to keep me on task, but two, we had to make our own independent musical choices. And so what that meant is that we really owned the piece. It was our interpretation. It was the way we chose to play it. Whereas in high school, we had somebody kind of directing us and telling us how to play it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and then speaking of chamber music, right, one of the cool things about coming to Butler is you're in Austin. Now, to you, growing up here, it probably was like no big deal. But like to a lot of people, it's a big deal to come to Austin. And you've kind of made the most of it, working with the Austin Chamber Center, right? So talk a little bit about that. How'd you get involved? And like I know you do the camp, because my kids do the camp, and it's like the highlight of the whole year for my kids. Like other kids look forward to Christmas, my kids look forward to chamber music camp. They love it that much. So talk about how'd you get involved with that?
So I first got involved by our old assistant director, Dr. Ruben Balboa. He referred me to Austin Chamber Music Center to start a summer internship with them. At first, I was just a part-time intern helping kind of logistically, set up rooms, keep kids on task, make sure everything was going smooth. But I loved the fact that I got to work with my kids. I got the fact that I got to do a little bit of teaching. I really enjoyed the fact that it was all about getting students to musically mature. These students had coaches in the room, just like I did when I was in high school. But a lot of the times they're asked to lead and they're asked to come up with their own ideas and their own interpretations. And that really appealed to me. So when the next summer came around, I volunteered to be a full-time intern. And so that meant that I was part of the audition panel. I was part of the team that put together different groups. I was part of the team that picked music. I was part of the team that organized the event. And that showed me a lot of things, not just about, music and how to judge and how to form groups, but also about arts management. There's a lot of things that go into arts management that a lot of performers don't get to think about very often. And that experience to me was eye-opening. And so I found myself actually very much enjoying kind of the logistics side of let's plan what room assignments we have. And, we need to figure out snacks. We need to figure out how many students we have, name tags, all of these little tiny things that people don't get to think about as much when they're performers.
Yeah, I mean, they do it so well. Mm-hmm. That is a well-run organization. Those camps are just incredible. So is that what you did this last year? Were you the full-time?
Yes. So okay. I was there starting from about second week of May all the way through the end of the workshop in end of July.
Okay. And from talking to you, you would think you'd went to like a conservatory, right? With like the amount of playing you've done and everything. But we're part of a bigger university, right? So talk about like your experience just with the university outside of Butler. What has that been like?
Yeah. So outside of the Butler School of Music, I've taken a few different classes. At my high school, at Austin High School, they offered a program called On-Ramps. And the On-Ramps program essentially was college level curriculum that is taught at UT, taught in the high school. And you had to sign up, you had to fill out a waiver, you had to actually get like a UT EID and all of that.
Oh, wow.
And so that experience to me was super, super cool because it allowed me to come in with some credits. And it allowed me to not have to take as many core classes. Like I haven't taken a single English class since I've been here.
Oh, wow.
Because I had my English credits already taken care of. But outside of the Butler School of Music, I've taken so many cool classes. I took so many, there was this one class that I took called Extraterrestrial Life Forms.
Whoa.
Where we talked about analyzing space for alien biosignatures and what the possibility of life is and how life emerged. And then I took a class, it was my UGS class called African American Music, where we talked about the emergence of African American music all the way back from the mid 1800s to the current present day. And that class was super fascinating because it related a lot to the popular music of today and the emergence of rap and R&B and other types of genres like that. So the classes here are so varied in what you can learn and what you can experience. And I think for me, that was just so much fun, is because every time I would step out of the Butler School of Music, I knew I was going to do something completely different.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. And are you going to student teach?
Yes, I'm going to be student teaching next spring.
Okay, so what I feel like you're very well prepared after doing the chamber music and especially string project. I feel like you're going to go and I got this. Are you nervous though about it?
I think I'm always going to be nervous. New experiences create new emotions and new feelings. However, I know that the only way that I'm going to feel better about it is by doing it. And I know that if I throw myself into it, it's going to be great.
Yeah, and Lori will be there.
Oh, absolutely. She's going to be guiding me a lot through student teaching.
She stays with her students for life. Like once you've studied with her, like 10 years from now, they're still calling her, and she's still calling them. So, do you know where you're going to be student teaching?
I don't know where I'm student teaching yet. I'm really hopeful that it'll be at McCallum Fine Arts Academy. The director there, Mr. Ricky Pringle, is one of my favorite directors, and I've wanted to work with him for a really long time. I haven't gotten the opportunity to, but I would also totally be okay going anywhere because I know no matter where I go, I'm going to get good experience and good opportunities.
Now, could you do junior high too, or is it middle, like high school? Like what?
High school would be my preference, mostly just because that's what I want to end up teaching someday. But I would also totally be okay with middle school. I'm actually currently placed at Lamar for this semester, Lamar Middle School, and that
are they the magnet school?
I think no, they're a fine arts academy. I think
okay.
I think you're thinking of Keeling
Okay,
School.
yeah.
But Lamar Middle School is where I'm currently placed. I'm actually going there later today to do some teaching. But
wow.
That's a really great program because middle school students are vastly different than high school students. And so having both experiences is something that I really want.
Yeah. And then you'll graduate, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you're months away. And then do you hope to stay here in Austin and teach?
I've been thinking a lot about what I want to do next. As kind of like my safety net, teaching is the way I'm going to go. However, I'm very adamant right now, at least, that I actually would like to stay here at the Butler School of Music and get a master's. I want to study conducting. I want to work on my communication skills with an ensemble, so that way when I'm up on the podium doing my teaching, I have clear communicative skills for rehearsal. And I think a degree in conducting, especially here, because I need to stay close to my family, my dad, my mom, all of them. It's super important to me that I'm with them right now.
Yeah, we've got some great conductors here.
Absolutely.
To study. Like who would you want to study with?
Well, currently right now I'm doing an independent study with Maestro Frost, who's the opera conductor. I think I would love to work with Maestro Kudiev because he has so much passion and so much energy and so much presence on the podium.
I like when he starts dancing.
Yeah.
He gets into it. Yeah.
And it's that level of passion that I want to emulate someday to my students. My teaching philosophy and my approach to the way that my attitude towards my students, we'll say, is always, how do I get my students to sound the best that they can, but also how do I get my students to enjoy what they're doing? And so I think that I have the part of getting the students to enjoy what they're doing. I've had so many students come up to me in the last years that I've started teaching, telling me, you're so awesome. I wish you were my full-time teacher. I wish that you could go to my public school and teach every class to me. But I also really want to bring my own musicality and my own conducting to another level. And the goal someday for me would be to become a professor.
Okay. Right. Yeah. I mean, you do bring that love of music. Like my kids, they like when you were here at this summer, they're like, Mr. Kendall's going to be there. I'm like, but he's not teaching you. I know, but he's there. And then it's so fun to watch you like in the orchestra because you just have such a good time. So, you can't always tell like which violists are good or bad, right? Because it's a section, but you're the most fun to watch because you're just so into it. So what advice would you have for students who are maybe thinking about coming to Butler or maybe they just got accepted into Butler about how to make the most of their 4 years here?
I would say, as I've said a couple of times today, throw yourself into everything. You really have to just immerse yourself in the life of a UT student. People will show you the ropes. People will show you the right way. But the only way you truly will get to experience and learn what it's like to be here is by doing, not watching. And so if you're thinking about coming here, if you're a prospective Butler student, I can wholeheartedly recommend this school for whatever you're studying because the community here is great. The people and teachers here are fantastic. The ensembles, the musicianship, the playing, the skills, everything is just incredible here. And I'm really grateful to have the opportunity to study here.
Very cool. And I hope we see you for another 2 years and then maybe another 3 years after that, right?
Maybe.
And then maybe forever after that.
You know what? That would be a dream come true.
Yeah.
It really would.
Yeah. So stranger things have happened. So you'd be the most, I would think, who would do it. So great. Well, thank you so much for stopping by.
Of course. Thank you for having me. It's my pleasure, really.
And now you got to run to orchestra.
Yeah. All right,
Yeah.
let's do
All
it.
right. Yeah. All right. See ya.